Flawed fun is the phrase I'm going to use to describe Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and it's one I use a lot, but I think it applies perfectly here. It's a game I love, and the original came out in 2008, and it was, at the time, such a unique concept and a breath of fresh air because we were in that period where FPS games, or more specifically, first-person shooters were dominating the sort of AAA and mainline space of single player and multiplayer games, right? It was the rise of Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Battlefield, right? Dominated the general cultural zeitgeist of gaming. And Mirror's Edge was a first person game, but it was anything but a shooter, although it did have, the occasional shooting element, but we don't need to discuss that right now. It was so unique for its time. And if you don't know what it was, Mirror's Edge is a game that is pretty much strictly about parkour and free running. And, story and setting aside, this beautiful sci-fi, grounded sci-fi world, which felt real and felt realistic, with incredible graphics, developed by DICE. It was a real revolutionary game at the time because the core gameplay systems were unique and they were really, really addictive. The whole parkour system, I think back to, looking at the rooftops, it's done on a level-based system. And though you are guided through color, through a red sort of path line going through the level, telling you roughly where to go, you can carve out your own path and find your own way from the start to the finish of each level. And the rooftops are almost like a puzzle which you've got to overcome. And those elements combined with the idea that it's a first-person parkour game, not only is it bold, especially for the time, but it really was revolutionary in terms of game design. And it was successful at the time, but the knock-on effect was that it was such a cult classic. It became a cult classic over the years. From 2008 on its release, was really fond in the speedrunning side of things, but equally it was just a really fun game to play. And for the longest of times, myself included, I played it growing up as a kid, and I had so many good memories with it back on the 360. I and so many others were just waiting for that sequel, and eventually we finally got one 8 years later in 2016. And the reason I think so many of us were so excited for it was the fact that, we had so many new technological advancements at our fingertips. And when it was announced that it was coming on the Frostbite engine, which was at the time, and to be honest with you, still is, the pinnacle of graphical fidelity when it comes to game engines. To put this in perspective, it just developed Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, the reboot of Star Wars Battlefront, which still looks incredible even now. We knew we were in for a treat, at least on the graphics side of things. And when the game fully launched, I think I didn't expect there to be so much backlash to it. It's a game that I still love, and I go back and play just for, even if it's for a 20-30 minute pickup, just to have some fun, because I don't think there's a game like Mirror's Edge, and I definitely don't think there's one like its sequel either. There were definitely mistakes that were made, and I think that reflects in some of the many review scores, which generally hovered around the 6 or 7 mark. It was a pretty mixed bag, but overall kind of positive. And there were mistakes. I'll be fully willing to admit that, particularly with regards to the story. I think that was the biggest mistake they made, was trying to get players invested in a story that they never wanted to be in the first place. The first game always put the gameplay at the forefront, and that's why it was so successful. It had a story, but for one, it was a lot simpler. 2, it was kind of in the background and pushed towards skippable cutscenes that you did not have to bother. And it almost felt like developers were pushing you to just, skip this, go have fun. Catalyst kind of did the opposite with that, in the sense that it really wanted to put the story at the forefront, or put it at the very least on the same pedestal as the gameplay. And I think that was a mistake because it wasn't particularly exciting. I can't even remember any of the characters outside of Faith, who was obviously the protagonist in both of them. And that speaks volumes, despite the fact that I'm talking about this game and I have a deep affection for it. I don't remember any of the story, right? What was incredible, though, and developed upon and made even better was, of course, the parkour systems, which just felt so smooth. And I brought back that point about how the first game, each level almost felt like a puzzle to solve. Trying to find the shortest path possible, the shortest, most optimal, most effective path across these sort of sci-fi rooftops. Catalyst very much does the same, except in an open world setting. And if you've been watching these videos on this channel before, you'll know I'm not particularly fond of open world games anymore. Perhaps as I was younger, not anymore. I feel like the genre and that kind of system is very much tired and overdone. There are exceptions to the rule, but even still with those, like Elden Ring, it's not my favorite of From Software's many outings. I've always said I preferred their sort of more tighter, semi-linear focused approaches like Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and the original. Catalyst, though, was an exception to that. I actually thought the open world worked fine, and I think that's largely in part due to how incredible the traversal system is. That's part of the fun. In the same way Spider-Man, you don't use the fast travel because it's just effective to swing through New York City. It's the same with Catalyst and this dystopian world you're in. It's so much fun to, carve your path through this world in your own way and just get immersed in that core gameplay loop in tandem with the absolutely incredible soundtrack by Solar Fields, which I just feel like people don't talk enough about. He helmed the first game as well, but the second one sticks out to me so much because it's such a unique palette of sound that I just haven't heard anywhere else. Fits the tone perfectly, and I actually used it in many of my MMA documentaries on my main channel, which I'm sure some of you would have already seen, because I think the sound is so striking and it fits specific moments in those videos, and I thought, why not? And you're listening to it right now. You'll see how incredible it is. It just works. Everything comes together within the core gameplay loop. In these pursuit moments where you're running away from enemies and you're trying to quick fire, in the split second moments, make these decisions to keep your run, your flow going while this soundtrack is pumping in the background. Everything just works, and it really just encompasses why I love the game. It's so much. It's not perfect, as I said at the start of this video. It's far from it. There are far better games, objectively, and even just in my opinion. But I have so many fond memories of Catalyst just for specific reasons like that. And again, there were like other flaws. The combat, focus on the combat particularly wasn't necessary. It was rudimentary and not that great in the first game. I actually preferred it in the second one. I think they did some good things with it, but again, you can strip it out of the game and arguably have a better project as a result. But I think the point I'm making is the highs of Mirror's Edge Catalyst are so unique and kind of unmatched. I don't think there's been a game that's particularly resonated me in that same way, or any game that's tried to copy Mirror's Edge's systems and do it as well as it has. And I kind of wanted to talk about that as well, because you look at the cultural impact that the series has had as an IP. There's not many free running games. Mirror's Edge kind of pioneered it. I mean, it really did. But there has been in recent memory Rooftops and Alleys, which just launched on Steam. It gone to full release. I haven't played it yet. It's been on my wish list for far too long, but looks incredible. And I think there's another one, Store Parkour Pro, which is inspired by sort of urban parkour scene of the UK and London specifically, and they built their own full-fledged parkour game as well. But equally, these are all inspired by Mirror's Edge, and I think in many ways a lot of those people who are in the parkour space now, again, it's far from a world I'm aware of or have knowledge on, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mirror's Edge inspired a lot of those people too, because it's had such an incredible impact. And if you haven't played them, definitely play them back to back. I think the first one is something you can kind of just blitz through pretty easily in a few hours. It's not a massive game, but it's a perfectly tight experience. Catalyst, a little bit more bloated in the sense that it's an open world, and that's obviously a drawback that I'm willing to admit to. But the core systems alone are worth playing. They're just the core gameplay. You can get yourself immersed in these just this world, and carving your path, is the phrase I said earlier, is the best way to describe it. Because that level of satisfaction and entering that flow state is such a difficult thing to achieve in terms of game design. When I did it at uni and studied it, it was something to consider. I was testing this theory of trying, where do you reach that fine line where the player enters that flow state of sort of subconscious gameplay, where they're not thinking about the inputs, they are just doing it and are completely immersed in that core gameplay loop. It's so difficult to achieve that balance with regards to difficulty and simplicity. You need to strike the balance between those two things. Mirror's Edge Catalyst and the first one do it absolutely perfectly at their best moments when it comes to the core gameplay, and that is exactly why you should play them if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Plenty more to come here. I'm absolutely loving just speaking my mind, talking about my personal experiences on the games that I love and the games I want you to mention in the comments below. I want to hear all about it. What are your personal experiences with Mirror's Edge or other games like them? Anything you want me to talk about? This is a haven in a way. I mentioned it many times. This is just a safe place and safe little pocket corner of the internet where I can waffle about my experiences to you hopefully you can get something out of them and you can share yours below. Thank you very much again, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good one.